We'll just let everyone come in. And I'm going to post a message in the chat because we have an English and Spanish channel tonight. So if you're listening in English, you can click on interpretation at the bottom and click English. And if you're listening, si estás escuchando en español, puedes escoger el interpretación abajo y luego selectar español. I'll put that there. And Jonathan, you can introduce us tonight.
Hello, all of you, each one of you. I'm so really happy. Speaking for Stephen and I, we are so gratified that you're joining us. Tonight is the second night of our COP26 program. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of things and how it's going to be different and more action-oriented tonight. So just wanted to share something that when Stephen and I spent a week in Glasgow going around listening to people, interviewing people, hearing people speak and cry out, and some of them pleading and some of them very disappointed. We reached this little tiny wee footbridge between where we were and the public was, and where the diplomats and the government representatives were meeting, and they were drafting the very last moments and hours of the agreement. And I described how we felt when we walked away, that we felt unheard, we felt disconnected, we felt that they weren't listening. And then when we read the actual statement from the conference, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, we were really disappointed. And we felt very sad. And the word that I think best expresses it is a Spanish word that was actually the title of our book, our last book about young refugees from Central America. And that word is solito, alone. It's not just alone, but it's that isolation that's unrecognized even as a human being, solito. And then overcoming that feeling of despair, we had a great meeting last night where people shared childhood memories of how nature was. It was so beautiful hearing each one of you talk about your childhood memories of nature. And it was a love song, really, in my mind. It was a love song to the earth, to the world of nature. And then, as you told us other stories and events from your lives. So I wanted to carry that forward, that positive energy forward. But I think one of the conclusions that I would say, not just us, but the world has taken away from COP26, it's that it was a cop-out. There were a lot of promises, or not even promises, inactive words, verbs. And so tonight, I think just among ourselves, this beautiful group of guests and participants, I want to focus on what people can do and have done and are doing. So that's our focus tonight, where I think we can really make a difference by hearing your stories. And the general format is that I'm going to be asking you to go back to a moment in time again to tell a story. But this moment in time will be when a climate emergency happened and you were called to action, each one of you, in your own ways, your own worlds. And then what happened? And what did you learn from this? What succeeded, what failed, and what can we take from this action? So that's the general structure of tonight. It's going to be going back to a moment in time, more recently during climate change, when you as a professional, as a citizen, as a person, were called to action. So that's how we're going to do it. Then later on, I'm going to hope that each one of you will have 2 or 3 suggestions, concrete suggestions about what people can learn from what you have learned. Because we know each one of you has not only survived a tragedy, but you have come to the rescue of other people, and you have helped people adapt and change, and also a different relationship with the earth and with nature. So that's how the program will be. And at the very end of the program, I'm going to ask everyone to think if we can come up with a resolution. Let's call it the Solito to Solidarity resolution. And it will have practical, action-oriented things that people really can do. So that's the structure. And I'm going to turn it over to the one and only Dr. Stephen Mayers. Take it away, Stephen.
Good to see everyone here. Yeah, so for those of you who weren't here last night, I just wanted to introduce us really quickly. We did a bigger introduction. By the way, I posted a video of last night's talk on our Vimeo channel, which you can access from the solitotosolidarity.org website. I'll put that in the chat. And I have the Spanish does not have subtitles yet, but it will soon. I'm going to do the translation and put subtitles there. But I did post it. So we're not going to do the whole introduction that we did last night. We're going to jump right in. But I just wanted to also say that, so, you know, we, Jonathan and I met and did a 5-year project interviewing Central American youth refugees who are fleeing, you know, complex problems, you know, gang violence, domestic violence, extreme poverty, and also climate change, especially increasing droughts in Guatemala and Central America that prevent people from, you know, growing enough food to survive on uncertain years, but also increasing hurricanes and things like that. Since then, since the publication of that book, we started to focus specifically on a second project on climate refugees and internally displaced people. So in other words, people who have to flee their country, and also people who just have to flee their home within their country to another place within their country. And we started talking to Pedro Ucbe and Haisel de la Cruz, a couple from Buctots, Yucatan, Mexico. They're members of the Maya community. We visited there in 2020 in person right before COVID happened. They have an indigenous assembly, and we became really interested in not only people fleeing climate change, but also people adapting to climate change, right? And like, you know, and not fleeing, all right? And trying to, you know, cope with climate change where they are, and, you know, which looks different in every region. From there, we became kind of internally displaced people ourselves, in a sense, like all of us here when COVID hit, right? We sort of, you know, became quarantined. We couldn't travel like we thought we would. So we started reaching out to people online and met Seifu Asegid, who's here with us tonight from Didawa, Ethiopia. And he's been taking us all around Ethiopia for 2 years on Tuesday mornings via Zoom and Skype and videos and doing interviews. He works with Save the Children, and we'll be talking more. Then we met Prabal Barua, who is not here. I'm not sure if he's coming tonight. He came last night. It's midnight in Bangladesh. He works for IPSA. If Prabal doesn't come, maybe we could say a few words about what he does as well. Then we also met Gina and Gardner from the Santa Cruz Mountains, close to where we live, who survived the CZU lightning complex fire and have, you know, some really interesting and inspiring projects that they're working on, community development, and that we'll be talking about tonight. And also Pascal Broca, who's also from one ridge over from Gina and Gardner in Bani Dune, which is also the Santa Cruz Mountains, who also survived and helped other people survive the fire, and also has interesting ideas for how to adapt to climate change. So just to sort of contextualize, I just wanted to say that we're going to be, we've gone from hearing what nature was like in their childhoods and their early connections with nature, now to kind of like, climate change and how climate change has affected their natural environments. And like Jonathan said before, how they're, adapting in different ways and helping other people adapt. And then we'll do this agreement. We'll also have around an hour and a half into the program, we're gonna also have a Q&A. So, those of you who are not on the panel, if you have any ideas or questions for anyone or story to share, there'll also be opportunity for that. So the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Jonathan is maybe all of us, I have a piece of paper here I just started. If you have an idea that could be on a climate resolution, that pops into your head while we're talking tonight, you could jot it down, and then we'll sort of put our list together at the end of the program tonight. So thank you all for coming. I see some familiar faces and names, and it's really nice to have you guys all here. So Jonathan, you're muted. Okay. There you go.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much. Again, thank you for your great work last night and for the last, since 2014, we have worked together. So now what I'd like to do, I'd like to call on two people who were very close to us, to Stephen and I, about a year ago in August, three people, Gina Gardner and Gardner Lund and Pascal. I would like first to ask Pascal, can you hear me, Pascal? To unmute yourself, and I just want to frame this story. In August, about a year ago, August, Pascal, who's a Frenchman who lives in the Santa Cruz Mountains, beautiful area, was actually sleeping in the same place where he's sitting now. And Pascal, could you tell us what happened to you that woke you up in the middle of the night?
Yes. Hi. So I was asleep in the summer. It's a covered porch, and this direction is facing east. So usually I get a beautiful sunrise in the mornings on the east side here, and yeah, this is my bed for the summer. In that night, I was awoken at about 3:34 in the morning. There was a loud noise, like if a train was coming, and it sounded like a train, like a freight train coming in, and then this wind came, but it was not like a regular wind where you have like variation. This was a constant wind, like if you are in a wind tunnel, or like a giant leaf blower, basically. And all of a sudden, this wind came like a front, and this mass of air moving, and yeah, it was something I've never experienced before. It was not like when we imagine wind as something blowing. This was more of a mass, like a giant tsunami of air moving, and so immediately I woke up, of course, from that noise. It was very, very loud, like as loud as if you're standing next to a train. And I woke up, and then I felt that something wrong was going to happen. Something was off. Something was just not okay. And then came the lightning. And I'm a volunteer firefighter, so in that situation, I packed my bag, thinking, well, the first thing we do in a situation like this, that we go to the fire station so that we establish a first response, and we can strategize and see how we can help. And so I packed my bag with a change of clothing and underwear and water and food, because you never know if and when I could come home. And I went to the fire station. Then other firefighters came in, and then we understood that something was really, really wrong, and we started looking for impacts. And I went to another place where we have a water tower and we could climb on top of it. It's fairly high. And from there, we could see the ocean. And, and so the lightning event was fairly long. I never experienced anything like this. There were lightning strikes going sideways, which I'd never seen before. There were lightning going up from the ocean up to the clouds and down from the clouds to the ocean and going sideways through the sky. So just lightning everywhere. And so we knew that spot fires would be started from that. And so that was the beginning of that fire. And so through the area, there were multiple spot fires that were started. And those different fires, some of them died down, but some of them grew bigger. And then they started merging together. And that's why it's called a complex fire, because there are multiple fires which were isolated, but then somehow they become so big that they come together into one large fire. And so that's what we call the CZU complex fire. CZU CZU is the name of the unit where we live. It's the Santa Cruz and San Mateo unit, which are two counties.
Thank you very much, Pascal. I want to now shift to Gina and Gardner, whose beautiful, beautiful home is on top, ironically enough, of a place called Last Chance Road in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So can you take it from there, you two, Gina and
Sure.
Gardner?
Absolutely.
Gardner was the last person out. They lost their home. They saved their lives. But tell us that story and just give us a vivid telling of that story, what it was like. And I want to say one thing, that this has never happened before. This has never happened before.
What's that part of it? What do you mean? What part? The lightning strike?
The lightning strikes, and this is the biggest wildfire in that area in recorded history.
Absolutely, yeah. 85,000 acres burned over a couple weeks. Just to frame the story just a little bit. So the 16th was the first day of the fire whole thing, and we had no clue, clearly, that we were going to go into this whole emergency situation with the fires. But as Pascal said, the lightning was just outrageous. You know, it wasn't just like a strike like you would normally see. It was like a strike that would break off into 10 to 15 strikes. And, you know, it was beautifully terrifying. And there was wind and the whole thing. And, you know, we had our whole trip that night was we had our date night that night. And so we had a babysitter sleeping in the cabin next door with our kids. And before the blowout at 3 a.m., we went and got one of our kids. Did we do that before the blowout? It was after? It was after. So after, we went and got them, and the kids were sitting there terrified, watching the lightning storm as well, you know? And I think at that point, we still had faith in firefighting, saving and stopping and all these kind of things. But at the same time, we had one of our main discussions as we drove up and down our road was that it was so flammable and dangerous and uncared for and untended. But just like Pascal said, at 3 a.m. that night, I had finally fallen asleep. It was super hot. It was just absolutely bizarrely hot. It was up in the high 90s. I think it was probably, you know, in the low 90s in our house at that time at night. And we had all of our windows open. And so when that huge gust of wind came through, like he said, it was exactly, if he framed it perfectly right, it felt like a tsunami of wind or like a shotgun blast of wind. All of the pots, any glasses or anything on all of the windows just blew right off and broke everywhere. We had doors blow open. We had one of the doors next to where I was sleeping, because I was sleeping downstairs because it was so hot, blew open and broke in half. And I was personally pretty scared at that point. You know, I was feeling like I needed my kids close to me and I needed to feel safe. And, you know, we're watching from where we're at, we could see the ocean, and we have a 180-degree view. We could see Carmel, Big Sur, we watched Carmel catch fire. We watched, we couldn't quite see Davenport, but we saw the Waddell Creek fire start. We saw the Butano Creek fire start. And we actually watched them for 3 days. So at that, just without going on about the rest of it, you know, at that point, we have a fire marshal on our road. So we actually had communication with CAL FIRE, and we're told to just wait. And everything was probably going to be okay, and that they probably had it. So, oh, I can't hear you, Jonathan. You're muted.
Gardner, can you pick up the story from there? Because we do have time limits. We want everyone to contribute.
Well,
Can you
sure.
just tell us about your ride down. You're the last one out of Last Chance.
Sure.
So that was 3 days later.
So from where our house is, or was, the house was, we were able to just really watch the progress of one of the fires. And it was a couple of miles away, but it was just on another ridge that we could see pretty clearly from where we were. And so the first day after the lightning strikes, it was a big fire. The second day, it was so smoky from our place that we could not see that at all. And as Gina was saying, the communications from the authorities were that everything was okay. They were waiting for things to kind of burn down to a certain point. Then they were going to put their fight on it. And that's what the communications that we got. But so the following day, when, you know, burnt leaves started falling into our yard, and we realized that, you know, the fire was coming our way, and that there's probably was going to be more than you know, CAL FIRE or any firefighters could really like tackle. And well, where we live, I mean, we've put in years of defensible space and home hardening and preparation and stuff. And to be honest with you, I was almost ready to stay and fight the fire. But fortunately, as I was packing my belongings in my truck, my neighbors who have lived up there for 40 something years, they said that they were bailing. And I mean, their eyes were kind of bugging out of their face. They were definitely really scared and were not hesitating to leave. So that's when I changed my idea, and I figured, you know, I'm not going to try and get the hose over here and the hose over there and stuff. I'm just going to get in the truck, and me and this dog are getting out of here. Gina and our daughter Honey and one of our dogs were already basically to safety down on the highway just a couple miles from our house.
I left about an hour earlier.
She left about an hour and a half earlier than I did. So basically from my home, I went to drive down the road. And I mean, I can't tell you the moments leading up to leaving, because the heat was really, really intense. It was really hard to gauge where exactly the fire was at that time. But, you know, my neighbors had told me that it had jumped the creek, which, you know, may not mean anything to anybody here, but that just meant that it was coming my way really fast. And it was an uphill climb, the wind pushing it from behind it as well, which is pretty much, as far as firefighting goes, wildland fires, that's pretty much worst conditions. And it merged with two other large fires, basically right behind our house, on top of the mountain where we live. And so anyway, I didn't know where exactly I'd encounter the fire on the road. And when I got about a mile or so down from our home, ran into one of our neighbors, the neighbor who unfortunately did perish. He was the one fatality in the, you know, in this whole CZU complex fire. And I ran into him. He said that the road was blocked, but he didn't actually see the blockage himself. He said it was a neighbor that told him so. And he was going back to what we had been working with the authorities for a number of years on, a rendezvous point where, you know, we had been told that we would be helicoptered from in the case of a, you know, wildland fire. And that's where this neighbor was heading to go to that point.
Can I say something?
Please.
I just want to say, they had actually told us not to leave. We weren't supposed to leave. We were supposed to go to this place. It's called the mill site. And because we don't follow the rules, none of us did that.
Basically everybody, you know, kind of thought for themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's fortunate that they did, because the only person that actually, well, one of the only persons that went to go and meet the helicopters never came, and that person perished. But I didn't, you know, I also, being me, I couldn't just take his word for it. So I went a little further down the road, and there was indeed a burning log across the road, and there was fire beyond it. So I turned around and was going to go and join him at that place, at that rendezvous point. He wasn't there when I got there. There was another neighbor who seemed like he was pretty resolved on staying there. So I left, and at that point I was actually going to go and try and go back up to my house. We have a big cement water tank that I figured I would jump in the worst case. I just toss a dog and myself in there, and then we just, you know, hope for the best. I thought maybe I might have a chance to, you know, get some sprinklers on and kind of fight it a little bit. But I was turned around by fire on my way back up to my house. I could not reach my house. So at that point, I really felt like I had no other alternative but to drive out of Last Chance. And about at that point where I saw the fire the first time when I went down the road, at that point it was blazing, actually, like quite, it had progressed quite a bit since I had just seen it maybe 5 to 10 minutes before. And so that was the first point where I entered the fire, and it definitely, you know, I had an open truck bed, and you know, some of my belongings caught on fire going through there. And so when I got through that little piece of fire, I jumped out. And we had just we'd gotten about 20 chickens just a couple weeks before. They were all little chicks. And so I did put them in a little plastic tub and was trying to carry them to safety. And that tub was on fire. And when I tried to grab it, the plastic melted to my hand, and I got some really severe burns, but I was not able to rescue the chicks. And I had a really extensive record collection as well, and that was on fire in the back of the truck. And there was just, I had no way of trying to put it out at that moment. So, and I could see that there was still fire further down the road, so I figured I better get hoofing. And so I drove as fast as I can. Our road, just to let everybody know, very rudimentary dirt road, just that cuts and winds through a forest to get up to the top of a mountain. It's a private road. We do all the maintenance ourselves, and it's a dirt road. It is, most people would consider it a hiking trail even. And so anyway, the normal speed that people drive on the road, it takes us about 40 minutes to get to our house from the gate, 8 miles down the road from our house. So it takes us about 40 minutes just from our house to get down to the normal road. And I did it in a lot less than that. I'll just say I went real fast, and I went through a lot more fire after that. And I drove until I saw the headlights of the firefighters. And they did try and hose down my burning truck. At that point, most of the plastic on the truck was melting. And they had to try a couple more times to put the fire out of all my belongings. But basically, I lost almost everything except one bag of clothes and my dog. That was that evening, you know.
Gardner, that is so powerful, and thank you so much. We have to keep moving on, because we want to hear from everybody. That was very powerful, Pascal, Gina, and Gardner. We will come back to you later for what can be done, and I know all of you are doing things and did things. So now I'd like to introduce Prabal Barua. Are you there, Prabal? Yes, I can see you. I can see your thing. Could someone help Prabal join us? Prabal.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. So tonight we're going to do a little different than last night. You're in Bangladesh, and you have been working for years with people who are victims of cyclones, of rising seas, of floods. So what we want to hear from you is, we heard last night about the terrifying experience you had as a child with a tornado, a hurricane. And now we would like, as a mature man, a man with a PhD in ocean science, who's helping people, can you take us to a moment in time recently in your work where there was another climate emergency in Bangladesh and you were called to action, and what you saw and what you did? We want to learn from your experience of what can be done and what you and your organization are doing. Prabal, thank you.
Thank you. During the in the 2021, in the month of May, there was a super cyclone Amphan outbreak in Bangladesh in the southeastern coast, in the coastal area of Bangladesh, where at least 5 lakh people lost their home due to high storm surges, and lots of area was damaged due to embankment and tidal surge, and people evacuated in the cyclone shelter with the support of government and non-government organization. When the cyclone is coming and the people are helpless to go, then our team, we have a, earlier I called about, we have a community team in the coastal area, which is constant of 10 to 15 people. They are mostly already experience of displacement and community people. The community team and our also government volunteer team, Red Crescent Society, jointly evacuated the millions of people, 10 lakhs people, 1 million people in the cyclone shelter, and also the help the protection, help the survive from the danger from the cyclone storm surges. The at that time, high-rise school and education institute and government administration and our office, NGO office also open for the sheltering the people, and they shelter the people from disaster, and also for their food and survive due to storm surges. But there are also 15 people died due to at that cyclone. But the people died during the come to the cyclone shelter, or due to strong wind blow, the trees are damaged, and then people are dead. And and after the emergency, when the when the people stay in the evacuation center during the when the cyclone occurred, government and NGO and also our team providing food and food support and other hygiene support to the people to stay the cyclone shelter or institute for the stay. This is the process, and after the and this is also done by our community team and also Bangladesh Red Crescent team for providing the signal number, providing the signal and the information news to the community. What are the danger signal number of cyclone and what are the possibility of damage in the coastal area and how they are going to the shelter. So people taking the preparation and go to the shelter. But the problem is the tidal level is high during the high tide, during the full moon. So lots of people damaged, but survived. But fortunately, the death number is low. Then according to the damage of the according to the dangerous level of the cyclone. So after the cyclone occurred, cyclone ended when the tidal surges also danger of tidal surges also gone. Then we government and NGOs asking the people to leave the cyclone shelter and go to their safer place. Some people lost their houses when they come to the houses because their living places damaged by the tidal surges or storm surges. For lost, so the people who damage their houses and damages and also housing materials, we in the southeastern coast of Bangladesh, IPSA and other NGOs and government give their assistance to the people to survive them, and we are giving the housing materials. Some NGOs and community people give the cash support, food support to the survive them. So this kind of help is by the government, NGOs, and our community people providing assistance to the disaster affected people.
Prabal, thank you so much. I want to continue a question with you. We know about one family, one house.
Yes.
And we also would like to have you talk about how you're engaging people, the communities, and the people of Bangladesh. It's a big organization across the country, to speak up for themselves to their government. And these are very important things. We know you're past midnight in Bangladesh, so we would like to ask you at this point to talk about 2 or 3 things that you can teach us that are positive things that can be done. Not only in Bangladesh, but into other places, maybe even in Miami or in other cities around the world, including London, or in other rural areas, when the rising seas and the weather is causing tremendous damage. So if you could just mention the 2 things I said. One is one house, one family. The second is people speaking up to their governments for them, because that's what we have not seen successful in the climate conference here. So please just give us 2 or 3 things that you think, 1, 2, 3, that we can do.
Thank you. At first, people in the coastal area demanding the sustainable embankment, which is very much necessary for all of the world. But not only concrete embankment, but also there should be plantation, coastal afforestation with sustainable planning should be necessary, and there will be aquatic grass with the soil binding. They have the capture of soil binding. So if we constructed only embankment, there will be not sustainable, but there will be including concrete embankment, there will be afforestation, mangrove afforestation, there will be aquatic grass for protection of the embankment, and this embankment also should require over the 50 years, what will be the might be sea level will be increased. Their point should be considered for the embankment, and there will be also planning should required for community-based relocation. There are some government, some international organization providing assistance to the displaced people in some countries of the world to the isolated places. At that places, there is the difference between harmony between community people and relocation people. So there should be community-based relocation program should implement in all the area, all the world, where not isolated places. There will be rehabilitation. There will be places in the community living places, and mostly, and also we should consider also the considered for the loss of we should also loss and damage program where the people should consider their how to utilize their resources, not to utilize utilize over resources. If we there is the revenge of nature also in some of the countries, so we should consider the optimum resources, because we destroy in the coastal area. We in all of the world now coastal agriculture, coastal shrimp farming is going on, where the expansion of the agriculture and shrimp farming or fish farming is expansion by destroying mangrove or afforestation program. So there will be a sustainable planning, optimum resources use. This is called uh, sustainable utilization, or a maximum sustainable yield for all kinds of using of the natural resource. If we take proper this approach, if we all over the world, then the people, the disaster affection of the world will be probably lost, probably reduced, or people will be happy to living the world. Thank you. This is my comments.
There's a picture behind you.
you're-
What is the picture?
Oh, there's the picture is suddenly the area was affected by river erosion. So I take this picture. The people loses their home. They are going to they are leaving the places with support of boat.
So thank you so much, Paval. You can go to sleep now.
Okay, thank you.
We know it's very late there.
Or stay,
and thank you
or
for
stay,
joining
of course. Thank you so much, Prabal.
Okay, don't worry. I am watching.
All right. So now I would like to go from Bangladesh to Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a very great, large country in the Horn of Africa. It has a tremendous culture and history dating back to what we talk about the biblical times and way before. So Seifu, who works for Save the Children and has been involved in health and disaster relief and telling the stories. Can you tell us stories, Seifu? Can you take us back to a moment in time, professionally, not in your childhood, but professionally, when the drought struck Ethiopia, and in the last few years, how you were called to action, Save the Children was called to action, and what happened in the drought, and how did Save the Children and your personal experience take action?
Thank you, Jonathan, for giving me this chance to express, my experience to share with others with regard to, climate-related displacement of people that I saw in my professional, experience with Save the Children. So I would like to mention two events that I will never forget in my life that I have experienced and I have been involved in responding to such, climate related, drought and extreme weather conditions that happened. The first experience was in 2006. I had no any experience of responding to any natural disaster before. And the assignment that I was given was just to carry out an initial assessment of people affected by overflooding of Lake Tana. If you may have heard of the Lake Tana, is one of the largest lake in Ethiopia. And it is a source of Nile River. The Nile River, it originates from this lake. And when there is, our summertime is in August, since by the end of June, and it lasts up to mid-September. So in 2006, what happened was, there was extreme weather condition, heavy rainfall in most highlands of Amhara in particular. And that year, Lake Tana was overflooded, and around 400,000 people were directly affected on the shore, those who live in those particular areas. And this particular area is known to be, high producing area. They produce, different varieties of crops that is more surplus, and it can go, it can feed many people. But that year, because of this heavy rain and the overflooding of the Lake Tana, around 150 to 250,000 people were displaced. And the first thing I did was just, there is a book, which is a spare standard, to how to carry out an initial assessment. And that night I was driving from Waldia to Bahardar, which is around 300 something kilometers. And I left Waldia late in the evening, around 5. And there was lightning, very frightening lightning. And it was raining and very heavy rain. And at that time, the road was not paved road, it was, like rough road, muddy, and the driver even couldn't drive. But the assignment and the mission that was given to me, gave him some sort of, power. And we drove around 100 something kilometers. And the next day, even at 4, we left that area, and then we drove down there. And on arrival, I saw this flood of people, not the flood itself, but the flood of people, around 4,000, 6,000 people were kept in a tent. So I tried to get as much as information as possible. And the number of people displaced, how many of them are children, how many of them are women, and what are the conditions there, what are the people, lacking, what are the needs. All this assessment I did there. And then who is intervening? It was only MSF, Medicine Sans Frontiers, at the moment that were responding there, treating people. Some people have already developed some diarrhea, and there were some illnesses of children because they were not getting clean water, and everything was contaminated and it was flooded. So even the water pointers were not there. So all this assessment I did rapidly. I visited around 3 campuses, each with 6,000, 7,000, some of them 15,000 people being, sheltered there temporarily. So with that assessment and all this information, I just met our colleagues who came from Addis Ababa, and they were, amazed by what I did. It was only 2 or 3 hours that I visited these camps, and then during this time, what I did was just, for them, they were amazed by the situation, so that we immediately went to respond. So even in the afternoon, we compiled all the information, we gathered everything. So what can Save the Children do? This was what they discussed. So the senior management team have already discussed on the issue with the information that I provided them. So within that same day, the next day, we have already started mobilizing our resources to respond to this situation. So we were providing them with non-food items like shelter materials for people to get to build temporary shelter. We have been providing them with water hygiene, sanitation materials. We have been providing, even bringing some immediate high energy foods for children's and women's in particular. So the next assignment I was given was just to assess the situation, to go around the lake, and I have to go the other way through Gondar, and I drove there. So I was told that many people are still, not being evacuated from the lake, because the lake already submerged all the houses and all the crops have been destroyed. everything was there, not there. So people were desperate in need of assistance. So what I did was, many of the people were not, didn't want to take an action, and they were afraid for their own life. But I decided, to work with government officials and to drive, on a boat, to drive 2 hours, 1.5 and up to 2 hours through the lake. So I went that village that has been already, been taken by water. So I took some pictures. I saw people on the tree, struggling for their life. Even I couldn't reach most of them, but I managed to get a few of them, and I took some pictures. And then with that pictures, we invited BBC. I remember after seeing that picture, BBC was interested, and then they mobilized their crew from Nairobi, because they don't have office here in Addis at that moment. And this journalist came from Nairobi, and I took him through the boat. So with that live transmission that we did from that affected community, the Joshua's, the Jewish people, organization, I remember they immediately responded with hundreds of thousands of dollars, donating to our organization and to reaching those people. So this way, I remember always, how immediate actions can save lives and minimize catastrophes from happening. So the other one is in 2015. It was again a shortage of water, this time in the Somali region around city zone. We call it city zone here in Somali, in the southern part of Somali, in the northern part, I mean, where 7 districts completely were affected by shortage of rain for 2 consecutive rainy seasons that have failed, left many of them, as you know, drought is not immediate, in causing like flood, like any other disaster, but it is slowly, and gradually, brings impact on peoples. So what I saw that time was, in 2014, 2 consecutive failed rains has resulted, in shortage of forage pastures for the most pastoralist communities in these areas. So I saw thousands and hundreds and thousands of dead animals, livestock I have never seen in my life. Even during the famine time in 1985, I was in the northern part, and I remember as a young man, I was 15 at that time. I have seen people dying, but I have never seen of those animals dying. But this time I saw these animals, and I was, desperate enough and to show to the rest of the world how this condition is affecting these people. So it is the only means for most of them, there is no any other alternative means of survival for these people. And, people, even I remember one old man told me that in my life, he said, over the past 70 something years that he lived in the earth, he have never seen such a drought. And it was dusty. You see a lot of animals died, and I took a picture that shows a comparison of, there were very tiny livestock walking, and a lot others were dead. And then I took this comparison, in one shot. So that way, I just shared that picture, and that has been used by UNICEF and other organizations other than even Save the Children. So it mobilized, many of our members countries, and immediately within, I remember within 1 or 2 months, our CEOs from 9 countries, including Canada, Sweden, Norway, South Korea, British, England, Australia, came to visit to see themselves here. And immediately we were able to mobilize resources that has been enabled us, respond immediately to the situation. And what we did was, in this regard, in fact, the already dead animals we can't reverse, but for those who are alive still, we were able to at least manage getting forage from other parts of the country. And we immediately, provided them with, forage for the animals. And for the people, we were intervening life-saving programs in nutrition for those malnourished children with high energy food, treatment at the stabilization center where children receives the most care they need to saving their lives. Because I have seen many children even at that time dying, And one of the things that I always recall is there was this child, a 2-year-old child, who was also, in addition to the malnutrition that he had, it has also pneumonia, developed pneumonia, because, other opportunistic infections will aggravate if once a child becomes malnourished, because he has no any immunity to defend himself and his body. So this child was at our stabilization center, but he was brought to that stabilization center lately, in some cases, because most of them are, living in very remote areas and without any services. So this child, we took our CEOs to visit that site, and one of the CEO from Canada was asking about that child. So I went back after 3 days to see how that child was doing, but unfortunately that child has passed away. So, this is really a very sad story, in fact, but, still in this modern era, people die from lacking food. And whereas in other parts of the world, we see people playing with food also. So it is really a very sad, and climate is real. That's what I would like to tell people. And drought is one of the situation that affects people.
Seifu, you among others here are heroes to us. And later on, I want to come back to you, because Save the Children is doing disaster relief. It's helping nutrition, but it's also doing things to help people change and transform their lives, and not just depend on relief. And those long-term programs we want to talk about in terms of things that can be done. And we'll come back to you later. So right now,
Yes.
I'd like to invite Hazel, and Pedro from Yucatan in Mexico. And Hazel and Pedro, as you may have heard last night, were the first people that Stephen and I on our journey, and actually on January 1st, 2020, we went to Yucatan to begin our journey about what we were thinking about climate refugees. And I just wanted to say that we were very anxious actually about traveling to meet Pedro, because just a few days before, there was a death threat against him, a very credible death threat. And we were worried that he would be killed. And it also threatened his family, his daughter and other children. And thank goodness we went. And what we discovered was the most warm and gracious reception for us in Yucatan. But Hazel and Pedro, I'd like you to take us to a time in the recent period, to a moment in time when you felt that the Yucatan was being threatened, the birds and the animals and the people and the water. and how you and the Asamblea and the Guardian of the Seed have responded, how you have responded, and what we can learn from you about organizing and standing up for your people and your land. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Hola, muchísimas gracias por el espacio. Nosotros nos empezó a llegar información de que las comunidades llegaban unas megaempresas que se llamaban de energías renovables y nos empezó a parecer un poco extraño el término energías renovables y empezamos a escuchar que estas energías renovables estaban divididas en dos, en los parques eólicos y en los parques fotovoltaicos. Entonces nos empezamos a preguntar qué era eso, ¿no? Y nos empezó a llegar la información que eran unos postes grandes con unas veletas y que las energías fotovoltaicas eran grandes espejos, ¿no? Esto era como la imagen que teníamos o la idea que teníamos de las energías eólicas y los fotovoltaicos. Entonces nos empezamos a preguntar, entre otras cosas, por qué se quería implementar estos parques en la península de Yucatán. Y platicando con las comunidades nos dimos cuenta que estratégicamente las veletas o las energías eólicas se estaban planteando tomar parte del territorio de la costa, este espacio donde hay playas, donde están los mangles, donde en este espacio de la costa de la península es donde pues empezaban a llegar estos megaproyectos, ¿no? Y los parques solares empezaban a ocupar grandes hectáreas de tierra y se empezaba a desmontar grandes espacios que para nosotros son aquí le decimos monte alto, de selva. Y empezamos a ver cómo había en ciertas regiones una deforestación muy, muy grande, ¿no? Entonces, ante este panorama desgarrador para nosotros, porque imagínense ver como una ceiba, que para nosotros es sumamente importante, ver cómo la ceiba estaba siendo mutilada, estaba siendo cortada, estaba siendo quemada después, y cómo se limpiaba todo un área, y nos decían que estas energías eran energías limpias, y nosotros decíamos, entonces son limpias porque arrasan con todo y limpian todo el área, o por qué se está diciendo que estas energías son limpias cuando estamos viendo que hay una clara deforestación de nuestro territorio, de nuestro espacio de vida, de nuestro espacio donde nosotros encontramos nuestra medicina, nuestra comida, pero también donde encontramos una relación profunda con los otros seres, porque ahí es donde vamos a encontrar estos materiales que necesitamos para celebrar con ellos la vida. Ahí encontramos bejucos para las mesas de nuestras celebraciones, ahí encontramos jícaras que nos sirven de trastes o de tazas para nuestro pozole, nuestra comida, y cómo todo eso estaba siendo deforestado, ¿no? Entonces, platicando con la gente, nos preguntábamos qué podíamos hacer, qué era esto que estaba llegando, o sea, del por qué estaban llegando ahí y cómo nosotros podríamos defender nuestro territorio, pero también defender la vida de todos. Y con esto me refiero a animales, a todos los que habitamos aquí y a los otros seres. Entonces, un 13 de enero del 2018, nos convocamos en la ciudad de Mérida para dialogar, para reflexionar, para saber más sobre estos megaproyectos que estaban llegando a la zona, y decidimos como Asamblea de Defensores, o sea, decidimos crear una asamblea que después decidimos llamarle Asamblea de Defensores del Territorio Maya, Much Shimbal, que Much Shimbal significa caminamos juntos, está en lengua maya. Y decidimos primero informarnos más sobre qué es lo que estaba pasando con este megaproyecto en específico. Y después de tener la información, de ver algunos videos, de hablar con otras personas que estaban pasando por situaciones así como los de Oaxaca, empezamos a darnos cuenta cómo había una serie de engaños detrás de estas energías, ¿no? Y entonces decidimos una acción concreta, decidimos emprender procesos jurídicos y ampararnos porque estas empresas llegaban a despojarnos del territorio con engaños, les hacían a la gente firmar contratos de usufructo, que eran contratos de despojo. Y bueno, ante esto nosotros emprendimos un proceso jurídico y decidimos también dar a conocer todas estas experiencias, todas estas acciones que nosotros tomábamos, decidimos darlas a conocer también para que esta información se vaya saliendo de las comunidades y mucha gente lo vaya viendo qué está pasando aquí, porque cuando hablamos de energías limpias o energías renovables, pensamos que es la mejor opción, pero nosotros lo que estamos experimentando es un despojo terrible, es un engaño, es acabar con nuestra cultura maya también de alguna forma. Entonces, decidimos crear un blog, un canal, donde subimos esa información, tuvimos talleres que damos con las comunidades y a través del canal de YouTube. Entonces, son algunas de estas acciones que emprendimos como Asamblea de Defensores del Territorio Maya, Much Shimbal, y tenemos muy claro que la tierra no la vamos a vender, ni la vamos a rentar, ni a estas ni a otras empresas.
En mi caso, hace alrededor de 30 años, pues comenzó a experimentar una cantidad de huracanes. En esta zona es una zona de huracanes. Entonces, pues entre estos huracanes que llegaban, uno de ellos pegó muy fuerte hace más de 20 años, pegó muy fuerte aquí en la península de Yucatán y pegó cuando las milpas estaban comenzando a espigar en su mayoría. Entonces, mucha gente de la península perdió la cosecha y no se pudo conservar ni siquiera la semilla. Entonces, los poquitos que pudieron tener maíz porque sembraron una semilla más rápida, que le llaman semillas precoces, que dan hasta en 2 meses y medio ya se puede cosechar, pues esos son los que lograron tener un poco de milpa, de maíz, de cosecha. Y bueno, pues una de las cosas que se hizo por esta gente campesina es convocar a toda la península para un intercambio de semillas en el sur del estado. Y este intercambio de semillas fue el detonante de una actividad muy importante para los mayas campesinos de la península de Yucatán. Se estableció como una actividad anual para el intercambio de semillas, y no solamente fue la semilla del maíz, sino de todas las semillas que se siembran en la milpa. Entonces, en este sentido, se estableció como una medida importante para conservar la semilla, para seguir trabajando las semillas, para ayudar a los campesinos que ya habían perdido algunas semillas. Se convirtió como un elemento fundamental. Y hasta el día de hoy, esta actividad se sigue realizando con el apoyo de mucha gente, de muchas comunidades. Sin embargo, los problemas que tuvo fue que algunos académicos, algunas universidades, algunas ONGs entraron a esta dinámica y comenzaron a hacer ellas mismas sus propias ferias de semilla y a día de hoy comienza a ser una actividad de académicos y de ONGs y que también está siendo arrebatado a las mismas comunidades. Entonces, me parece que uno de los trabajos importantes es recuperar la actividad como una actividad de la comunidad indígena, de la comunidad maya, y que no sea el patrimonio de las universidades, ni de los académicos, ni de las ONGs, que muchas veces convierten esto en un negocio más que en un intercambio real, comunitario, como se había pensado originalmente. Entonces, ante los huracanes, siempre la gente piensa en la importancia de cuidar la semilla, de conservar la semilla, para que en el siguiente año pues se pueda compartir con los demás. Y cuando hablo de semillas, repito, no es solamente la semilla del maíz, sino hay alrededor de 60 semillas que se comparten para que todos los campesinos que hacen milpa la puedan tener. En esta zona, que es una zona de huracanes, siempre tenemos esta situación en la que nos vemos en un riesgo de ser afectados por el llamado cambio climático. Hace 2 años tuvimos una experiencia muy fuerte porque nos llegó la pandemia y en medio de la pandemia, pues llegaron las sequías y en muchas zonas no caía agua para la siembra y se atrasó mucho la siembra de maíz, y cuando cayó la primera lluvia y se sembró, los elotes comenzaron a salir afectados por una gran cantidad de gusanos. Y después, cuando el elote creció un poco, vino una gran cantidad de lluvia y se inundó. Y después se volvió a sembrar y luego comenzaron a venir los pájaros y a arrancar los elotes, las pequeñas semillas que estaban saliendo, y luego finalmente los que se salvaron de los gusanos, de la inundación y se salvaron de los pájaros, pues se lo comenzaron a comer las langostas. Fue una cosa muy difícil hace 2 años. Sin embargo, lo que nos salvó como campesinos y como indígenas que trabajan la milpa fue justamente estos intercambios de semillas que la gente logró conservar, mantener y hacerlo en los 3 estados. Se hacía o se hace una feria de semillas en Yucatán, una en Quintana Roo y una en Campeche, de a una semana de diferencia cada uno, para que pues la mayoría de los campesinos tengan la oportunidad de aprovechar este espacio. Y pues es una de las cosas en la que nosotros también nos hemos involucrado como personas, como integrantes de la asamblea, como campesinos, como mayas, para apoyar esta medida que nos garantiza nuestra comida, nuestra vida, nuestro trabajo y nuestra cultura, sobre todo tan ligada al maíz, como dice el Popol Vuh, que somos mujeres y hombres de maíz. Y justamente esto es la medida que se ha emprendido en la península para mantenernos en esta dinámica y en nuestra forma de vivir y de organizarnos. Muchas gracias.
You're a poet, an Izel, and you're raising a beautiful family. And we're going to be posting, Stephen is posting some of your poetry, and there's so much to share from their website. But right now there's another guest that I want to introduce, whose name is Ibrahim. And Ibrahim joined us. We met him in Glasgow at the COP26 events. and he is from a Northwest African country called Benin. And so I'd like to introduce Ibrahim, if you can join us. Are you there? Can you hear me, Ibrahim? Unmute yourself. Can you hear me? Ibrahim, are you there? I see your picture and we can come back to you. I just heard that you're going to have to leave. You're in London.
I see that he
traveling.
unmuted himself. He did unmute himself, but I can't.
No, I
hear
did it.
anything.
I unmuted him. I unmuted him.
Oh, I see. Ibrahim, are you there?
Well, last night, Ibrahim talked about some very important things that they've learned. How to save electricity, for example, is to go back to the traditional architecture of thatch and mud, and to where he grew up in the villages. The homes were very cool in the very hot summers and very warm in the winters. And then they were since supplanted by concrete and tin roofs and things, and a lot of electricity. I'm hearing someone else talking in the background. Anyway, so I guess we'll have to wait for another time for Ibrahim, and he prepared some music for us last night that maybe we can use that music again.
You can see it on the recording that I posted on our Vimeo page at the very end of the recording, of the first recording. Beautiful guitar playing and original singing. And I just posted links in the chat to his organization. I just want to say he was very inspired by the Peace Corps' work in his country and decided to start his own organization called the Benin Volunteers Corps. And it was actually one of the first, he was telling us, I mean, when he was 25 years old, he started this organization. He was one of the first volunteer organization in West Africa. And he was invited to the African Union at like age 25 to serve as an example for these types of volunteer programs throughout Africa. So that's pretty neat. He came to COP26 and was actually a part of the negotiations with a part of an organization, a network that I also posted a link to here called the Climate Heritage Network, which focuses on using indigenous wisdom and heritage as an inroad to combat and fight against and adapt to climate change. So let's unmute him one more time, Jonathan, and then move on. Hey, Ibrahim, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Jonathan, you're muted. I'm going back to you. I just unmuted you.
Ibrahim, John?
Yes.
You're a new friend. You're a musician. You're a cultural ambassador. You're an innovator. And can you just tell us briefly, take us back at a time recently where a climate emergency or a climate challenge happened to your country in Benin, and how you and your country has responded, and what we can learn from your response to this.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you also, Steven. I'm very happy to meet you and very happy to be on this event. Benin is in the particular situation about climate change. You know, in the south we have water like ocean who is coming, and people is moving and losing their houses. This happened in the south, and when you came in the north, you have also desert who is coming also, and because it's very hot there, and desert is coming, and people also is going to moving. So this is the situation of Benin, and between this situation, we are thinking about how we can resolve all this situation. So we work with community. We work with local community about traditional know-how and focus on cultural heritage, and we want to learn more from local community to how we can resolve these climate change problems. So our focus work is to learn about takienta. Takienta is traditional houses, and they use local materials to build these houses. And for us, it's possible from these houses to learn how modern architecture can make orientation about natural ventilation, how also a modern architect can use natural materials to build a bioclimatical houses. And to do this, we make like community engagement, we make workshop, we put the women, the youth, and the men together, like a traditional schools where they can meet and share all of traditional know-how. We want to whole generation to pass the traditional know-how to new generation. And to do this, we work with them like a traditional school. So that is what we are doing in Benin.
Thank you so much. And I don't know if you had time, but we want to play your music at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to shift gears right now. I'd like our participants to just talk to each other, exchange things with each other. And I'd really like to start out with Gina and with Hazel. The women are obviously, not obviously, but tragically, the women and children are the hardest hit by climate change around the world. And often women's rights are not protected and their voices are kept down. So I'd like for the two of you to perhaps talk about this from a women's point of view and how important it is and what you have done and are doing, not only in your own lives, but and what you can suggest for women to do. Gina?
It's funny because in my list that you asked me to make, that you asked us to make about things to do, for me, it keeps coming back to the children and educating them. Because once you become a friend with a child, it's kind of like you have a buddy team member for life. You know what I mean? And I actually think that it's pretty much the same thing with Mother Earth. And it's super easy. Kids get it. Just like that video you posted, the guy who kind of looked like a clown with his rabbit bunny. They know the difference. It's kind of like a repeat of what I said yesterday. For me, it sounds kind of a little bit weird, but my goal is to indoctrinate the children correctly with the proper knowledge about nature and to connect them with nature. And it's been really beautiful for us to see just over the last few years when we've really started to acknowledge, the birds and the animals and the creatures in our life with our children. And it's so beautiful to see them just naturally embrace something like that. Personally, the stuff that I've done is, when we haven't really talked that much about it, is I worked for about 10 years as a life lab teacher. So I was a garden teacher. And my whole thing was bringing kids into the garden and teaching them about life in the garden. And it was pretty obvious at the time that the kids who needed it the most would be attracted to the garden, and had some just really beautiful moments there with children. And so my daughter, Mariah Crowley, is actually on this call, and she is an environmental studies major at Western Washington University. And she's about to graduate in December. And so I have one successful indoctrination so far. And
thank you for coming, Mariah. Nice to meet you.
Her whole goal in life is so beautiful because it is to help with the world. It's all that she cares to do. And so I kind of feel like not to sound negative, but it's almost like wasted breath on some of the people who have already made up their minds. And it's not like I think that really the goal is, but without going on too long, that's pretty much what I've done. And I've got 4 other children, so I'm working on them. And, you know, not just Mariah, but all of the kids in her classes and all of the kids, I see them now. I'm still good friends with one of Mariah's best friends. And it's cool to see that influence. It's very poignant. So I think that it's actually, that's what I would say. Muted.
Hazel, can you talk about women's issues in the Asamblea and how you're organizing Mayan women and people? Thank you.
Sí, claro, muchísimas gracias. Pues aquí nosotras hemos visto, hemos experimentado, hemos pensado que una lucha eficaz por la defensa de nuestro territorio tiene que ser una lucha comunitaria, tiene que ser una lucha que sea propia de las comunidades. Y cuando digo una lucha comunitaria me refiero a que se involucre toda la comunidad, así como nosotros sentimos, así como nosotros estamos acostumbrados a esta forma de vida, que tiene que ser comunitaria, que tienen que estar los niños, que tienen que estar los abuelos, que tienen que estar las abuelas, que tienen que estar las mujeres, que tienen que estar los hombres, que tienen que estar las personas discapacitadas, como les dicen, que tienen que estar las personas homosexuales, lesbianas, que tenemos que estar todos, porque solo así se da una lucha eficaz. Nuestros abuelos, nuestras abuelas nos enseñaron a que se tiene que defender nuestro territorio entre todos, porque entre todos podemos todos. Y no, y esta lucha, nosotras, específicamente las mujeres, hemos visto que tiene que ser una lucha organizativa, que nosotras como mujeres también tenemos nuestros propios espacios de reflexión, de diálogo, de convivencia comunitaria, y estos espacios también los tenemos que defender. Nosotras como mujeres nos reunimos en torno a la milpa también. Nosotras vamos a la milpa, al igual que nuestros compañeros, y nosotras ahí también empieza un proceso de educación, un proceso de reflexión con los niños, con las personas mayores, con todos, con los campesinos, con todos. Y también otro espacio de reflexión que tenemos es la cocina, en torno a una banqueta, en torno a una mesa redonda. Nosotras podemos dialogar, nosotras podemos reflexionar ante estos megaproyectos que están viniendo en nuestras comunidades, nuestras preocupaciones y cómo podemos hacer frente a estos procesos. Entonces es muy importante también defender estos procesos que tenemos como mujeres, pero también estos procesos que son comunitarios, estos procesos que nos ayudan entre todos a defender lo que es de todos y a defender también esta palabra que nos dejaron nuestros abuelos en este calabazo que hoy está guardado y que necesitamos seguir tomando, necesitamos ir reflexionando y necesitamos seguir defendiendo, porque es así, solo así podemos hacer frente a este monstruo que pisa grande.
Thank you so much, both of you. Wonderful perspectives. Now I would like to ask 2 people, Seifu from Save the Children and Prabal from IPSA. Both of you are not only doing emergency relief,
By the way, Jonathan, sorry to cut you off. Prabal's not here, but Seifu can respond.
All right, Seifu, I would like you to address how Save the Children, which many people just think of as a refugee or a drought relief program or a hunger program, is doing much more in conjunction with the people you're serving. You're asking them to participate in programs that include long-term change, and you're not imposing these programs on them the way Hazel and Pedro have described in the Yucatan, but you're getting their input. You're evaluating always how it's working, what's not working, how do we learn from it. And could you just talk about one of those programs, Seifu? Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I would like to emphasize on, rehabilitation. The first thing that Save the Children do is an immediate response, life-saving programs. Whenever there are disasters, be it natural disaster or conflict-prone disasters, and based on the situation, the first thing that we do is just to saving lives. And apart from that, we have a period where we will be recovering, we will be going into the recovery stage. And the last one is, once the people try to recover from any, aftermath and after disaster, sustainably, we see the future and how we rehabilitate them, in terms of changing their lives, for a longer period of time. So with this regard, especially on the last part in the rehabilitation programs, what we do is just we involve people to participate from the very onset, from the designing level into the process and until the program is implemented. So with their consent and with their involvement, we try to pilot programs in a way that can be scaled up in other areas too. So for example, after the 2015 drought, in 2016-17, after the immediate life-saving program was over, and what we did was just we sat together with these pastoralist communities and we tried to get their opinion how we can overcome such problems, because it is becoming recurrent. Drought is becoming recurrent. Once they lost their thousands, some family have up to 250 goats, sheep, up to 10, 15 cows. So once they lost it, it's over. It's not a cash that they have deposited at a bank that they can go and take it away. So what we did was just at least to saving those core animals with animal feeds, but for in the long term, we introduced fodders, pastures for their animals that they can feed them, without traveling longest distances. So in those areas where with potential water availability, what we did was just we brought, the seedling, a Sudan grass, elephant grass, other varieties of fodders, pastures for the animals, we introduced in these areas. And we were able to be successful in those areas with potential water availability. They saw it, and then even despite their providing the feeding to their animals, even they were selling the surplus and even duplicating it to other parts where they can also grow such kinds of fodders for their animals, and they can also store them for the bar time. Whenever there is a shortage of water, they can reuse it, they can store it, and then they can feed their animals whenever there is a drought. So the other thing that we did was just to involve, because these people were only familiar with looking after the animals, and agriculture practices were almost none in those pastoralist communities. But the water is there. Sometimes there is a potential water availability in some of the areas, so they can at least harvest water during the rainy season and then use that for gardens in their areas to plant some food crops that they can use for themselves, and also sell some of the surplus. So in error area in particular, in a potential irrigation areas where there is a river that flows all year, So we did we did some small scale irrigation canals that we built for these people, and they have started to grow, some fruits like orange, mango, and other. And I could mention, 10, 15, 20 families currently produces and sells this orange to Djibouti market, export even beyond the consumption of Dredoa and the surrounding areas. They are now exporting. And a family that I met last time, they told me that up to 300,000 birr, even myself, as a graduate, as an NGO worker, I can't earn that much money. But these farmers are now earning this amount of money. And we are seeing some changes that we can replicate across, those potential areas with availability of water. And also, they can grow at least twice, 3 times in a year. Instead of waiting once in a year for the rainy season, they can grow with this irrigation. In the other way is that we are not only supporting families, but what we are seeing as a problem is young unemployed, pastoral dropouts. We are seeing a growing number of young people without job. They are going to school, but in Ethiopia, for example, 150,000 every year graduates. So imagine how we can create a job opportunity for these young adolescents, particularly 85% of Ethiopians being in the rural areas. They are peasants, they are children of farmers. So the land is not enough. Our population has grown, quadruple, even in my lifetime. In the last, in some 40 years ago, Ethiopian population was only 30 million. Now we have reached 120 million, which is quadruple. It's 4 times fold of population growth. So what Save the Children is now piloting, working with some donors like the European Union, the United States, USAID programs, and other large donors. We are trying at least create a job opportunity, skills that the young people who graduate from high school can be engaged in. So through our resiliency program, drought resiliency program, we are focusing on more on pastoralist and farming children youth, because the problem is that once these young adolescent boys and girls, when they lose opportunity, options here in their country, many of them die in the sea, crossing, trying for better life in Europe, in the United States, especially the Gulf countries, the Arab countries. Most domestic workers in the Gulf countries, I would say 90% of them are from Ethiopia. And all the diseases that occurs in the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea and Djibouti, including Somalia, is the young people who are migrating from Ethiopia. And the problem is because their families are unable to provide them enough food and also a living condition, because drought is happening recurrently. So we have to also think how we can engage these adolescent young people to become productive enough and self-sufficient and self-employed. So in this regard, we have been working with the local technical and vocational schools who provides them with skills that they require. So Save the Children will be covering their expenses and paying for their tuition in the schools, so that these young people now are becoming employed. For example, last time I met some adolescents who have been employed in the road, toll plaza, the highway express road that is being managed by the government. So around 50-something of the young people whom we have trained and helped with their CVs have got job opportunity in this area, and they are earning 5,000, 6,000 birr, which is, you know, quite a decent income for most of these adolescents. So we are creating.
Saifu, I have to interrupt you. I have to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
You can read about Saifu's stories and many of the people's stories that we are collecting and going to be sharing in our book. But what I wanted to do is give the opportunity now for people who have been attending, who have been listening, who are to ask some questions and share some comments. And then after that, we're gonna try to put together a Solito to Solidarity resolution. But first, let's hear from anyone who wants to raise their hand, or we will allow you in to talk or ask a question. Thank you.
And let me just say that what maybe we could do, since we have about a little less than 20 minutes, maybe we could do both at the same time. Maybe we could sort of start, like, all of us putting together the Solito to Solidarity resolution. And I want to say two things really quick. One is that the way to ask a question is to either type it into the chat, or to raise your hand physically, or raise your hand virtually with the reaction button at the bottom. So you can do those three things to either ask a question or propose a point on our Solito to Solidarity resolution. So COP26 just ended, and for those of you following, we've been talking about this yesterday and today. A little disappointing. You know, they came up with an 8-page resolution with very little promises. So, you know, we could think about, you know, what was missing from that kind of a resolution, or just ideas on our own. I have a few, mostly that I've heard from you guys tonight, but I want to hear from other people first.
Thank you, Stephen. Let's hear. Don't be shy.
Who's got a question or an idea to put on our climate resolution?
I have a question I have a lot of questions, and thank you to everyone who shared. I have a question specifically for Gardner, as you were telling your initial story about sort of, I don't want to say the lack of preparedness of the fire services or their lack of response, but it didn't seem equipped to address the situation. So I'm curious, like, now as moving past in the timeline, moving past, is what does it look like in terms of building infrastructure with the community so that fire services might be better prepared in the future for some of these events that are hard to predict, but that we need to be prepared to address?
You called on me, but I'd actually like to hand that question to Gina, because she's incredibly active in trying to stay on top of, you know, that's our whole, the space that we're in right now is becoming a community center to gather people in the name of raising fire awareness. I've been trained as wildland firefighter and doing brush clearance on my own, but as far as, like, we want to reach out to the larger community and create more consciousness around it, and that's where I need to hand it to Gina, because she's laying out that infrastructure and is really trying to be a big part of that, and she can speak better to it than I can, really.
Well, so on a micro level in our little community, one of the main issues was the fact that we were in, a lot of the road was state park road. And so the core issue is the lack of maintenance of the forest, because it's been under this whole colonial capitalism umbrella of where we have to make money off of everything. And so Paradise, you know, has burned 3 times because of the fact that there's this logging operation, you know, I think it's like northeast of it. And instead of growing trees like they naturally would with a big you know, with space in between them, they grow them like little matchsticks. And, you know, it's now proven that that's what started the fire. So number one is paying attention to how the forests were stewarded by indigenous people for over probably 100,000 years. They say that every portion of the entire state was actually touched by people's hands, and that we didn't have these massive spaces that were untouched. And so I think number one, we have to kind of realize what we have been raised up into, which is this whole weird colonial capitalism mentality that, like Gardner and I have pointed out, nature and us are separate. It's just not the case. And, you know, we've all been complicit. We can't help but be complicit, but we have to figure out ways to make changes. So with that just little basis thing going on our micro level, the state parks were not taking care of the parks. And we all knew that, and we've been asking them to for a long time. So, but on a bigger level, there's only 365 fire trucks for the state of California in CAL FIRE. And when the night that we met, Jonathan, we learned that that's one of the things. And so 365 fire trucks, that's 1 per million people approximately. It's not going to work. People in our county are losing home insurance because little do they know, the actual reason is because our fire departments are not equipped with the proper, you know, future, like now technology. A lot of them are over 20, 30 years old. And the insurance companies look at that and they go, oh, sorry. And so I would say that the biggest issue, and I keep hearing this over and over again, is it's kind of like the idea when you have any sort of organization and the administration has to have the buy-in. If the administration doesn't have the buy-in, no one's going to get it. And so CAL FIRE and many organizations have been operating from this kind of like this hero mentality where they don't really involve us as citizens, which I'm sure Pascal could speak to because he was in the volunteer fire department. If I remember correctly, they weren't even called. So, you know, one of the biggest issues with our situation was A, communication, B, you know, stewardship, which is kind of like a triggery word just because, you know, a lot of like, well, how can we steward the whole forest? Well, we actually can if we work together. And so what we're trying to do here is basically, you know, the Thor is we're trying to just kind of help people slowly and gently and lovingly get the information. I just want to point out the difference between pronoia and paranoia. Paranoia is the expectation that everything's going to go wrong, everyone's doing everything horrible against us and all this. And I personally would prefer to go with pronoia, which is the idea that all of us are probably working together for the better good of humanity. And there's probably really just a few bad apples in the bunch, and they just happen to have control. So I would say back to policy. We have to work on our ground level. And I really liked what Hazel said is, you know, it's all about everybody being involved with equality. And I think that all people are hit by climate change, and women and children are just kind of like, you know, I don't feel like we're as forgotten about. It just depends. I think it's more like sections of the cultures, actually. It's not even, you know, because some women and children are more thought about than other women and children. And that's part of the problem too.
I hate to interrupt you, Gina. We have 11 minutes by my count. We can extend it a little bit to come
And we have
up
a
with.
question for Hazel in the chat.
Okay, we don't have time for the question right now. I'm sorry.
No,
We have
no,
11 minutes to put together these ideas, these things that we've been hearing and saying, and people have been saying, to collect them together. And I apologize, Hazel can't answer this question right now. So Stephen, do you have a list of people, of ideas that you have been hearing?
I do, but I would actually like to I'd like to give Hazel maybe 2 or 3 minutes to answer Francisco's question, if we could, and you know, and answer it in a way that is, you know, I think it's related to our final kind of goal here is to come up with a list of a resolution, a climate resolution. So Hazel, what is your top long-term challenge coming out of your current struggles against the so-called renewable energy companies invading your land? We have Javier translating. but Hazel can also read it because Francisco included it in Spanish as well.
Ok, sí, nosotros pensamos que lo principal es fortalecer nuestra identidad como pueblos mayas, como comunidades, como cultura maya, fortalecer esta identidad para así poder fortalecer también nuestras luchas comunitarias, nuestros procesos comunitarios y poder hacer frente a estos megaproyectos que vienen a invadir nuestro territorio. Y también producir nuestra propia comida, que eso también nos garantiza esta libertad y esta autonomía que tenemos como pueblos y como comunidades indígenas.
Thank you, Haisel. I know Pascal has his hand up as well, and let's use this as an opportunity, Pascal, to start collecting some points for a resolution if you want, but feel free to answer that in your way as well. You can unmute yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to complement the previous answer about the fire protection. So just in 20 seconds, there's been a big change in the way Cal Fire in California responds to fires. Kind of going away from attacking fires and focusing more on preservation of life, meaning evacuation. I think the tragic events that happened where people were dying in their cars trying to evacuate really changed the perspective. And so the two things that have been shifting and changing from what I see as a private person is that first, the fire season used to be a fire season. We used to have a fire season, then off fire season, and we had a structure where firefighters would work during the season, then other ones. So this is coming to an end because of climate change. Now we have fires year round. We have wildland fires in December and during the winter. And the second thing is a focus on evacuating people. And so as a result, even though it's still called Cal Fire, but the main goal is not to fight fires anymore. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Pascal. I think you're muted, Jonathan, by the way. So let me, if you think it's a good idea too, Jonathan, let me start the list off by sort of listing a few things that I'm hearing everyone else say, both yesterday and today, actually. I hear for a call for community engagement. And we're very inspired by the way Save the Children, by the way Three Sisters, Three Corners, Gina and Gardner, by the way IPSA, Young Power for Social Action, Prabal's organization in Bangladesh. These communities, and also Muchimbal, this Asamblea in Yucatan, these communities all listen and base their work, whether it's response to disaster, like the day of, or whether it's long-term planning and helping people adapt to climate change, they base their work all, in listening to the communities, right, and letting people, guide that. I could say more, but just sort of that's one thing that I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing a focus on educating children and empowering women, and also, building true community. So I just wanted to start the conversation off with that.
I would like to add a couple things is we can't wait for COP26 or COP27 to take action. Just as the people who confronted the fires, they had to take action themselves. Pascal fighting the fires, Gina and Gardner for getting the hell out, and then changing the way they think and act around forests and fires. And another lesson that we're hearing is that it's not enough to just, it is very important to provide emergency relief as Save the Children and IPSA and other organizations do, but don't stop there. Ask the people what they need and what's working. And then pilot programs can build strength and can exchange information between organizations and groups and communities. Another one is the very act of why we're here today. We, in our own modest way, over the last couple of years, have reached out to the people here, and you have responded and you've shared things with us. So we believe that listening to people's stories and connecting people to one another in our small way here is one of the things that we human beings can do. And many people are in despair about what's happening and what's not happening, but we can do things, and simply telling stories and sharing them with each other. Stephen, or someone else like to contribute another resolution?
Yeah, let's hear a few more, guys. Small or big, you know, micro or macro. What can we put on our list? I think
time is running out. Let's
Liz
jump in.
Lopez. Let me unmute Liz Lopez. Liz.
I think it's echoing Heizel about dispelling myths about renewable energy, to have that in writing for people. I think that's really important because I don't think it's covered enough by the media.
Dispelling myths. And what was the last part you said? Sorry, to have something in writing?
About renewable energy, and just to have it in writing for people to read, to understand, kind of like what Heizel was talking about, like with the solar panels, that it's not always upfront what's really going on.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Jan Locke, Jan Locke, raise your hand, please, and unmute yourself.
You can see me because you can't. Don't worry. Following, I just posted something in the chat. Jonathan, we met in Trafalgar Square, so thanks for inviting me today as well. It was really good, pleasant. I wanted to say thanks to all, and it almost, you know, brought me to tears, everything, all these stories. But your optimism is so important. I want you to all to stay positive and to keep fighting. And we really want you to support wherever you are in the world. And I wanted to say there's this thing in an environmentally healthy world. And if you look at environmentally, the word as such carries really the word mentally. We really need to take care of everyone who is taking the fight to stay healthy and positive. And you know, Jonathan, as you said, the long-term one is of course very, very even more important almost than the disaster relief, because you know all the physical wounds, the mental wounds, they were carried around, the aggression which arises as well. We need to help healing those wounds, and this is important for us and the world to be very positive in that sense. And that was just my, I know we're running out of time. The other thing I would say, what I heard and learned today is that everyone in your part of the world really refers almost back to heritage, to where you come from, where we come from. We learn from our elderly, we learn from our nature environment, we learn from the context we live in, and let's always listen to that and learn. We need to stay curious as well.
That was great, Jan. We did meet in Trafalgar Square during the march, the climate march in London. I would like to say now that go back to the original theme. From Solito, the response of being isolated, afraid, and unheard, to solidarity, connectivity, solidarity with people on the forefronts of climate change around the world, and children who are worried and afraid, and people who have know-how and experience to share. Can we agree? I think Stephen and I, we may not be able to put together a resolution right now, unless you can chip in, Stephen, and wordsmith it for us. But what I would like to do, if he can or can't do that, is at the end, I would like everyone to be unmuted. And then if you believe in it, if you want to connect it to it, Solito to solidarity, from aloneness to solidarity.
Yeah. And just to respond really quick, I just allowed everyone to unmute themselves, so people can do that now. And I think we've created a pretty good list actually, and I don't need to write it down or repeat it because we've sort of I think we've really touched on some big themes, all of us at the end here, and feel free to add another one at the chat. But I've unmuted everyone, or no, I've allowed you to unmute yourself. So why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself? It looks like everyone has, and why don't you lead us, Jonathan?
Muted.
Oh, you're now muted. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear what you were saying, Jonathan. Let me unmute everyone. Sorry. And Jonathan, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Cool. Maybe.
You have journalism background, right? No. Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. Because you had that journalism shirt once. I'm going to say something.
Okay, I love you.
Something about being a writer.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
that's cool. Okay, I just thought
I don't know if journalism.
This is amazing.
That's
I guess someone's got the TV on. Anyway,
what you want to focus on yet? Or?
All together now. All together now. From Solito.
Solidarity. To solidarity. From Solito to solidarity.
From Solito to solidarity.
Solito to solidarity. Solito.
From Solito to solidarity. To solidarity. So this is not the end.
Yeah.
This is the beginning. We're going to be continuing this discussion, and we hope that all of you will continue to join us on this journey and network with us and with each other. And Steve and I are going to be working on this for another year, and we want to hear more voices and more connections. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming. And I just want to say, we've learned about some amazing organizations tonight. There are ways to support these organizations, right? So if you have the means and any way to support these organizations, please do so, or reach out to Jonathan and I for more specific ideas about how to do so. We keep up with solitotosolidarity.org to follow Jonathan and my work. We're going to be looking for opportunities to amplify voices as what we're trying to do, whether it's in writing, whether it's at events. If you guys have any ideas for how to do so, we want to keep this conversation going. Over the last 2 days, we've wanted to bring lots of voices in to this People's COP kind of summit, and we also look forward to pairing off people, and having small events with fewer people and having more time to go into detail about those regions. So anyway, I wanted to plant that seed as well, and thank you all for coming. Really, really inspiring.
Thank you for caring about our stories. Super, super
Thank
grateful.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Lovely. Keep it up.
We'll be in touch.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Mwah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao.
All right.
We did it. Congratulations. Javier, thank you so much.
Thank you, Javier. I'm gonna stop the meeting now, and thank you, everyone, and talk to you soon. Bye. Adios.
Bye.